of the United States, nor the strength of the dollar per se, which are upholding the dollar as it stands today. But on the other hand, I think to answer that question, we'd have to really have an understanding of both of the various negotiations behind closed doors between European bankers, American bankers, their Asian partners. I mean, I think they are committed to sharing the spoils. If the U.S. dollar is abandoned as a world currency, we may land up with a new world currency, which is the Amero. There's been a lot of discussion on the creation of the Amero, which would be the currency corresponding to the North American Union, but broadly it could also be the currency of the entire hemisphere. I should mention that among the G20, most of the ministers of finance and central bank governors are firmly behind the Washington consensus. I don't see anything coming out, let's say, from Brazil. Brazil is a firm supporter of U.S. monetary policy. In fact, the head of the Central Bank of Brazil is a former CEO of Boston Fleet, one of America's largest financial institutions, which was gobbled up by Bank America. So again, within these various countries, you have finance ministers or former World Bank officials. You have central bank governors who are former Citigroup or Bank America CEOs and so on. I mean, they control. They, as a result of IMF World Bank reforms of the last 20 years, Wall Street controls the reins of macroeconomic policy in these countries. I should mention the IMF is always an instrument. It is not the ultimate power. It acts on behalf of Wall Street, so that when you say the IMF goes into a particular country and creates havoc, then you realize that in the wake of that havoc, J.P. Morgan Chase and various other banks come in and pick up the pieces, and that's what we saw in Indonesia in the wake of the Asian crisis in '97, and that's what we saw also in Brazil in the wake of the 1999 collapse of the Sao Paulo stock market. What happens? The Western banks come in and they take over through an IMF sponsored privatization program. They take over the various financial institutions, and they also acquire control over very profitable assets, state enterprises, mining, petroleum, whatever. I mean, that is ultimately, I think, the outcome of this crisis. It's eventually a massive change in the structures of corporate ownership across America. We can see it, as I said earlier, we can see it with General Motors. Who is going to buy it up? Okay, the stocks have collapsed by something of the order of 30%. The automobile industry is in dire straits. Part of this collapse is due to manipulation, stock market manipulation, and the hidden agenda is eventually to take over these very highly profitable sectors of U.S. industry.
Again, we are speaking to Professor Chossudovsky of the University of Ottawa. Sir, in closing today, again, where do you see all this headed? I mean, why don't the American people particularly, why aren't they out in the streets with pitchforks opposing this extraordinary looting of their wealth? I mean, what does it take to get people motivated here to defend themselves against these tyrants?
Well, the thing is, on the one hand, I think that's a very important question. I think first, the actual mechanisms, financial mechanisms, are not well understood, and the responsibilities of major financial institutions are not really clearly identified. the mainstream media is not really giving us the information they should be giving us. They're not saying. I mean, these are Enron type. This is an Enron type operation. It's cronyism. It's corruption. It's insider trading. It's illegal in many regards because all those activities should be banned. But many of these crony mechanisms are built into the system. I mean, for instance, short selling is built into the system. It's allowed to short sell a company. In other words, to drive its price to the floor, and that's what they're doing. I mean, that's what they're doing with General Motors. They're doing it with many companies, but and when you short sell, you make money when it collapses. So it's a very pernicious type of instrument, okay? Because collapse becomes a very profitable undertaking. When you collapse a company, you make money, and you make money when it collapses, and then you can then use the windfall gains that you make, and you can buy the company at its very low price. You see, so that's the whole notion of financial manipulation. So that I think the U.S. public has not been informed on how this system actually works. And essentially, people's savings have been appropriated. People have lost their savings, their lifelong savings. They've lost their homes. They've lost their jobs. And indeed, the conditions for a major upheaval are there. I mean, we're talking about thousands of people who are tens of thousands of households across America, no more than that, whose lives have been affected as a result of a system set in place in 1999 under the Financial Services Modernization Act. But we're led to believe, and the financial analysts actually the way they speak, the way they analyze, they say, it's a cyclical downturn, it's going to go up again. Everybody believes it's going to go up again, so they say, well, I'm going to leave my savings in there and then wait until it goes up again. But of course, in the meantime, they've lost their savings. Okay? They've lost their savings, and those savings have been appropriated by the financial giants, which are also the recipients of the government bailout, and that government bailout is also financed by tax payments. If you take the bailout, which is well in excess of $1 trillion, okay, because there have been various other payments under different rescue programs, and you add to that defense expenditure plus the allocations to the war in the Middle East, you're talking about something of the order of $2 to $3 trillion, okay? And then you work out how much that is in terms of in money terms for each household across America. We're talking of something of the order of $20,000 per household at least, in terms of what has been stolen. But what has been stolen is only the tip of the iceberg, because as a result of this process, the entire economic system has been driven into bankruptcy. The whole industrial and service sector corporations are driven into bankruptcy, leading to layoffs. The whole thing is cumulative, of course. Okay, it's cumulative. There are multiplier effects. They're well understood. These layoffs then are conducive to a dramatic decline in consumer spending, which then backlashes on the levels of production, and of course, increased levels of poverty and worldwide decline in consumption will then lead to a situation where companies can no longer produce because there's no longer a market for those commodities.